A few years ago, when I was 16 or 17, I worked in a restaurant as a waitress. There were two locations, one in my town, which I'll call Restaurant A, and one in a town about 30 minutes away, Restaurant B. I should mention that Restaurant B is located in a rougher area, and many of my coworkers weren't from the best of backgrounds. Nonetheless, they were sweet people, and I trusted them. I was trusted as a manager on Thursdays at Restaurant B, which usually meant I was the cashier, server, and manager, and the only other person would be a cook, which I'll call Dave. In the restaurant, there is a front glass door that customers use, and a back wood door, no window on the door. We used to take out trash and such. One day, we had no business, and I was in the kitchen with Dave and another cook that was about to leave. We're standing around talking, with Dave right in front of the back door, the other cook to the side of the door, and me about 5 feet away from Dave in line with the door. He had a bag of trash in his hand, and he was going to take it out. He opened the door while still facing me and talking, and behind the door was a person. It was clearly a person in a gray t-shirt, jeans, and a black hat. I saw him for a split second, long enough to know someone was there, and then Dave saw my face and turned around, which blocked my view, and the guy was gone. The other cook saw my face turn white as a sheet when Dave had opened the door, and joked that it looked like I had just seen a ghost. Oh, the irony. While Dave started looking around outside to see what I could have seen. I started actually panicking. I have severe anxiety and a panic disorder, and Dave was trying to calm me down, but he also seemed really freaked out. He asked me what I had saw. I told him I saw someone. I described the person, and what he told me next will never leave me. Dave started crying and ran out the door with his phone in his hand. He was outside for nearly half an hour, and when he came back in, he was calmer, but still nervous. He told me that roughly 10 years ago, he and his friend were in a horrible car accident, which ended in his friend dying. He told me the person I described standing outside of the door was wearing the exact outfit his friend had died in. And apparently, I wasn't the first person to see the ghost of his friend. Dave told me that whenever something were to happen to anyone in his family, his friend would show up to either him or his family. For example, one time he saw the ghost of his friend, and literally a minute later his phone rang and he found out his father had just suffered a massive heart attack. When he had went out of the door, he was calling his family to make sure everyone was okay. Luckily they were. But not even 2 days later, he found out his wife had miscarried. As if that wasn't weird enough, the same night I saw the ghost, something else weird happened that I believe was paranormal. But I also understand that could have been paranoia. I was up front at the register, still shaken up, and a huge crow was hovering outside of the front door. It was so weird. It literally was just flying in place. It suddenly flew away, and then a really strange-looking man approached the door and opened it wide, but didn't enter. He had the creepiest smile on his face the entire time. Moments later, the crow was back, and it almost came in the restaurant, but another customer swatted it away. The man literally turned around and left, didn't order anything, and didn't say a word. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I'm just hoping someone hears this and understands that what I went through is real, because everyone I know doesn't believe in the paranormal and thinks I was just imagining things. Yesterday, something pretty crazy happened to me, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. My friend is from the UK, and she is an absolute doll. I love her to bits, but her parents are a little weird. Her father is a perv, always has been, around me and our other friends. We try and avoid going to friend's house, but because she's located in the exact center of the city, we always end up meeting at her house before we go shopping, to the movies, or out to dinner. I'm 16, will be 17 in July, and they are all 17 to 18. I will not go into too much detail about the creepy things her father has done, but I can tell you that he has peeped into her bedroom while I am changing into my swimsuit or my pajamas several times. Pervy Dad has also done a few things to our friends, but he has always stayed in the reasonable deniability zone, where if we accuse him of peeping or getting too close or being too inappropriate, he can easily make us feel like the crazy ones. We actually thought we were all over dramatic and paranoid until dinner one night in a restaurant months ago, when Friend was not present. Someone said, "Do you think Friend's dad is a little weird?" To which we all said, "Yes, I thought that was just me." This is common. Men like this are despicable. They have a talent for picking on girls, manipulating them, and taking advantage of them. Her mother was either completely oblivious to her husband's actions or thought that all men behaved that way around attractive teen girls, and that it was our fault for acting promiscuous. We are religious Jewish girls in Israel. We wear long skirts and uniforms to school, and we won't touch a light switch past 6 p.m. on a Friday. But yeah, of course we're trying to seduce your husband. Yesterday, Thursday, I realized that it was the latter. Friend has a pool at her house, and she invited me over to swim. I was hesitant, but she mentioned that her parents would be leaving soon, and that we could blast music and hang out. So I packed a bag and rode my bike over to her house. When I arrived, her parents were still there. Apparently the appointment was rescheduled, so they decided to stay home for the evening. Pervy Dad and Crazy Mom were watching TV on the couch, and I thought they wouldn't bother us. We're outside, and before we get into the pool, I put on sunscreen. I'm not wearing anything too crazy, just a plain pink bikini. Usually I'm a little self-conscious, but I've been going to the gym every day and getting fit, so I felt good about myself. But after what happened yesterday, not anymore. Pervy Dad comes out, and while Friend is in the pool, he comes and sits next to me on the chair. He engages in light small talk, and I pray he's just here to chat. The conversation turns a little inappropriate, but again, if I said something, he would have said that I was acting paranoid. That was until he asked me to smile for him. And if you're a girl, you know the kind of anger that request invokes. I said, "Excuse me, you're being very inappropriate. Please leave me alone." Very plainly, but firmly. He told me that I didn't have to be so rude about it, that he just wished I would smile more because I was looking a little depressed, that it was immature of me to come into his house and shout at him. I wasn't even shouting. Crazy Mom hears the noise and comes outside. She senses the tension, sees me in my bikini, and immediately turns red in the face. Pervy Dad and Crazy Mom go inside, and I continue lounging in the chair. A few minutes later, Crazy Mom comes outside with a few choice words to say. I was hoping she would apologize, and if she had been calm and respectful, I would have covered up and apologized. But the universe was not kind to me on that day. "If you're going to sit by my pool dressed like a slut, then act all innocent when men flirt with you, you can leave my house now." I was in shock. I have never had an adult speak to me so unkindly before, but I bit my tongue. She was my friend's mother, and I am not a troublemaker. I told her that I didn't mean any offense, but some of the things that Mr. Pervy Dad was saying to me made me uncomfortable, and I politely, but firmly, asked him to leave me alone. She started screaming at me. I didn't get all of it because I was in such a daze, but it was something about how her husband was a good man and that I was such a whore for trying to get him to sleep with me, that the only reason he was talking to me was because I looked depressed and he wanted to give me some company. I was ungrateful, and I was rude, and blah, blah, blah. Then she raised her hand like she was going to slap me, and I flinched. This somehow made her more angry. I was escorted out the door. She grabbed me firmly by the arm, still in my bikini, clutching my bag, my phone, my keys, while Friend watched from the pool. I haven't spoken to Friend since then. Oh well. Friend, I hope you can learn to realize that you don't have to behave the way your parents do, and you can rise above that. All of us are here supporting you and loving you. And to Pervy Dad and Crazy Mom, I hope we never meet again. When I was 19 in college, my friend from home came to visit me with her boyfriend. They rented a hotel room in the Chinatown area of the city, so we decided to pre-game at her hotel room and then go out for the night. My friend gets way too drunk, so me and her boyfriend decide it's best for her to just sleep it off. It's like 1 a.m. at this point, so I tell him I'm going to catch a cab back to my college campus, and I'll see him the next morning. Disclosure. We had been drinking, but I wasn't drunk, just tipsy. I go downstairs and there's no one in the lobby, not even at reception. I was going to stop there and ask them to call a cab for me. This was around the time Uber started getting popular, but I didn't have the app yet on my phone, so I hadn't thought to order one. So I see no one around and I walk outside thinking I can catch a cab at the corner. I stand there for 20 minutes and not a single car goes by. Things are actually eerily quiet, so I get spooked. I started walking back to the hotel and looking behind me to see this man crossing the street towards me. He's walking really slowly with his head down and he's whistling. I'm really creeped out, but I watch a lot of scary movies, so I'm thinking, you're just paranoid. Then I see this black car approaching in my direction, so I freeze, because I feel like I'm stuck between two dangers. One guy walking towards me, behind me, and this car approaching me head on. The car stops next to me, and the driver rolls down the passenger window and he says, "Were you looking for a cab?" He's an older man. I say, "Yeah, I am." And he says, "Great, you found one. Where can I take you?" At this point, I'm thinking this is either a blessing or you're really walking into a trap. I had to choose the best of both evils, and tipsy me decides to get into the car. I hop in the back seat quickly and close the door. The other whistling guy just stands next to the car staring at me. The driver says, "He was following you." And I don't say anything. And he starts driving and says, "You're going to blank campus, right?" He mentioned my college. I thought it was weird that he knew, since I wasn't wearing any college gear, and there are about 4 other college campuses in the area besides my school. But I say yes, you can drop me off at the front gates, because I don't want to lead him directly to my apartment. As he drives, he asks me if I believe in the supernatural, and I say I'm not sure, but I think so, and he asks me what I study in school, and I tell him my major. And he says, "You remind me of someone I know," and I say, "I hope that's a good thing." The rest of the time, we pretty much are silent. And when we're a street away from the front gates of my school, he says, "Sometimes we're sent exactly what we need at the right time. Don't you agree?" And I tell him yes, that I have felt that things happen when they should, and he says, "Maybe like a guardian angel." And I laugh and say, "Maybe." We reach the front gates, and the street is really narrow. It's a dead end, really, because the opposite end of the street leads into the campus and cars aren't allowed to go in there unless they have a special pass. There's a guard in one of those guard boxes on that end that lifts the little pass thing to allow cars inside. So we get to the front gate and I say, "Thank you so much for the ride." And I tried to hand him a $20 bill, but he waves it off and says, "Don't worry about it. I did what I had to." And I say, "Are you sure?" And try to hand it to him again, and he says, "Yes." So I thank him again, and I tell him in order to go back to the main street, he's going to have to do a U-turn to back out, since he won't have access to the end of the road because of the guard. I step out of the car, cross the street to the gate, turn around, and nothing. There's absolutely nothing on the street. The car just vanished. Now, this doesn't make sense to me, because he would have had to do a U-turn to get out. If he had gone where the guard was, I would have seen the car stopped at the end of the road waiting for access. And if he had gone quickly and sped up, I would have heard that too. And the next day, I woke up to a million calls from my friends saying she stepped outside of the hotel that morning, and the street had been blocked off because there was a murder. The description of the guy they were looking for fit exactly what I saw the whistling man wearing. I work at GameStop. It's a great job, and I'm surrounded by everything that I enjoy. Games, anime, and etc. I'm not saying this to be conceited. It just makes the story make more sense. I am pretty. I've been told I am very pretty. And I've even been told from my manager that's why he hired me, because a large percentage of our customers are male. This post is about one particular customer that I've encountered. I mainly work on the registers. This job consists of greeting people when they walk in and, of course, working the register. It was getting close to closing time, and I was the only one up front at this time. I was getting started with my closing duties when I heard the buzzer that goes off when the door opens. Without looking, I welcome the customer. "Hi, welcome to GameStop. Let me know if there's anything I can help you find." Normally I get a hello, or they respond with a question, but it was silent. I look up from behind the counter and see the man that just entered the door looking at me. But once my eyes met his, he looked away and started looking at games on the shelves. I shrug it off. It's normal for male customers not to greet me, because they think because I'm female I don't have valid knowledge about games. And I continue with my closing duties. I'm bent behind the counter when I feel someone standing on the other side. It's the man. He puts the games on the counter and says nothing. I grab his games from the drawers, then I proceed with the normal questions we ask. "Did you find everything all right? Do you have a phone number with us? Do you want us to protect this game for you?" My questions get met with silence, and all he does is stare. I turn my attention back to the register while finishing up the transaction. I can feel his eyes digging into the side of my head. I print out his receipt, put his games in a bag, and he takes and turns around to leave. I again shrug this interaction off, because again, it's not out of the ordinary for me. It's almost time for me to pull down the gates and lock up when I get a call. I groan because I think it's a customer trying to wiggle their way in before we close, and I pick up the phone. There's heavy breathing coming from the other end. Hi, thank you for calling GameStop. This is blank. How may I help you?" "I was just inside purchasing some games." "Oh? Was something wrong with the purchase?" "No, I am just calling to let you know that I received your signals." At this point, I'm very confused, because I treated him like any other customer. I'm not sure what you mean, sir." He said this a little more sternly. "I'm calling to let you know I picked up on your signals." Also, I know I should have hung up, but I was curious what he was referring to. "You are very beautiful, and your signals were received. When do you get off? I'll be waiting." At this point in the conversation, I hung up, and I rushed forward and closed the gates and locked up the store. I went into the back and told my manager about the phone call, and he said after I finished closing up, he would take me home, because my apartment complex is very close, so I walk. As I was quickly replacing the trash bags, I saw a car pull up right in front of the store and park. No one got out. Luckily, my manager parked out back, and we left out the back door. I never saw the guy again, but every time I walk home, I think about that one particular customer. I'm having to post this on my main account, which isn't ideal, but I want to tell you this story in case there are other people who may walk into something similar. But suffice it to say, this is all real, no exaggeration, and happened this afternoon. I was going for a job interview under the title of Marketing and Campaigns, good salary, and they seemed great on their supposed site. From applying to getting an interview, it was around 2 working days max, so very quick. I am a 5'4" woman in her early 20s, and I am fairly attractive and in good shape. I feel this may matter for the context of the story. Today I was walking to the interview place, and as soon as I got in, I had this feeling in my gut that something was not right. The offices were actually one small room where there was a reception corner desk, a tiny makeshift waiting area, and then the interviewer and candidate next to it. There was no privacy, and all the candidates could watch the others' interviews. The place looked weird and barely furnished. There were branded purchase bags like Chanel and Pandora along the wall, and there were some vague printed accolades on the walls. The only staff there was a woman at reception and a woman interviewing, both attractive, young, and well-dressed. At this point, I felt something was wrong. So much so I took a picture of the office to jokingly send to my group chat. I'll link if possible. To me, it seemed like an attempt to seem fresh, modern, and appealing to the young average woman. The interviews were only 15 minutes each, with no opportunity to ask questions. I watched two girls go before me, both of which had nothing in common, academically or experience-wise to me. Again, a bit weird for the position and salary. When it was my turn, I sat through a confusing 15 minutes of vague info on them wanting to grow us into senior management, and it sounding less and less like what I applied for. I was shown a sketchy-looking presentation on a MacBook, which after it was on the last slide, was quickly turned away from me. In this presentation, they made big claims about who they had worked for, but no info on what they actually had done and what the role was. They apparently were interviewing 45 women today, then shortlisting 5 for an intro day this coming Monday, where they'll decide to hire you on the day. I still made sure to give a good interview, but immediately knew I didn't want the job. Something felt wrong. When I got out and had time to process, I realized the office I had been in, which had apparently been theirs for months, had no online paper trail and no sign posting on the front to suggest that their company was there. I also looked at what I thought was their pretty nice and trendy site, but suddenly there was a new paid ad on Google under the supposed brand name I searched, but for a different MLM-style company with a different name, with a £250 joining fee. The site had poor English and barely worked. It was sketchy. The phone number they had given me was seemingly a dummy, as that number was for a totally different and unrelated company in the area. The women I had met had very common names, and when they emailed me about the interview, the boss I had met had a totally different name, despite it being her doing the emails. Also, the second lot of interviews on Monday they had mentioned in the interview, they gave no information on it. Apart from it would be from 11:30 a.m. to around 8:30 p.m. or later, and there would be 5 chosen candidates. I decided to call the police non-emergency number when I got home, and I gave them as much info as I could. The guy on the other end took it very seriously and explicitly told me not to attend to anything they invited me to, as this whole situation seemed strange. They are currently investigating. I got a call back an hour ago from the company congratulating me and inviting me back for the day on Monday. I asked them to send the info through so I could consider and send a response after dinner with family. In the email they sent, they say to go back to the office I was at today. There was no other staff there or space for a work environment, and to bring a warm coat to meet clients. It's very hot in my part of the UK currently, and why would they introduce people who don't even have the job yet to their clients? If they had just moved here from London a few months ago, the need for a warm coat would still seem irrelevant, and it suggests that you would be going to a different location. Something is seriously wrong. Part of me was tempted to go film what happens if, at best, it was a scary 10-hour hard sell of an MLM. However, due to police advice, I politely declined their offer, citing my other genuine interview on Tuesday as my reasoning. I made a friends-only Facebook post about the situation in case any of my local friends were applying for the same thing, and I am otherwise trying to stay low on this on my public profiles. I think I just had a run-in, with at minimum a very creepy MLM scam, or at worst, potential human trafficking. The town is near to one of UK's biggest crossover points to France, meaning in a few hours you could be anywhere, I am shaken, and my gut feeling is my best reminder that I may have escaped a very scary situation. Please be safe out there, and to the very nice women I met there, let's not meet again. I was hesitant to post this because I haven't told anyone, but here we go. I've changed names, of course, to protect identity. I live in a small county with a festival in May and hog racing in June and a curfew of 9 p.m. A few years ago, our county was shaken up due to multiple apparent overdoses. A few people were arrested that same month the overdoses happened. One of them was my older sister's boyfriend at the time, Jim. Jim was a dealer and cut his own crap. Nobody knew what he put in it except for him, his runners, and my sister. It was laced with fentanyl, which is a pain medication. Taken in low doses, it causes death and it is fast-acting. The addicts didn't know what was in the heroin, they just wanted a high. Jim and my sister, however, knew what they were selling to them. I didn't know what my sister was doing at first, until years later. I met someone at school, befriended them. We were both new to the school, and neither of us had a lot of friends. We both had Facebook, so naturally at that age we thought it was cool, so we friended each other. This is when I found out her brother Tom passed away around the same time Jim was arrested. Not only that, but due to my younger brother having a birthday, my sisters and me took photos together and posted them on Facebook. My friend saw them and told me something that I never thought I'd hear. Your sister was at my house the day Tom passed away. My heart dropped, but I knew. My sister helped kill all those people. It wasn't just Jim, and eventually I got my answer when Jim called us from jail. He didn't want her to go to jail because he loved her, because he cared for her. My sister promised she would wait for him. 2 months later, she latched onto another man who would eventually be found dead from apparent suicide, and after my dad passed away, she's gotten worse. She made death threats to us, wished death upon us for something out of our control. So to my loving, crack-headed sister, let's not meet again. When I was 15, I was in a really bad mental headspace. With that being said, I was depressed, lonely, and desperate for someone's attention. So against better judgment, I made an account on Plenty of Fish. I understand that I put myself in a dangerous position for predators, but I also understand that any man who I told my age to should have just reported my account and not spoken to me. But after swiping left and right for about an hour, I met a man I will call Red. Red was 26, a father of 2 beautiful toddlers, and a Puerto Rican native who recently moved to Florida. He spoke a fair bit of English and had this charm to him when he spoke. When I told him my age, it's scary now to think about how okay he was with it. He simply told me that we wouldn't have sexual relations, and that our interactions would be innocent. We talked for a few months before talking about meeting up. When I talked to Red, I felt happy, whole, like I finally had someone. The first few times we met up, it was fine. We went to the outlets, Disney Springs, the movies. He was a perfect gentleman, held my hand, opened doors for me, and kept his hands off me. We kissed a bit, but nothing too intense. About 6 months into our relationship, I turned 16, and I invited him to my house, through means of sneaking in my window, of course, and he agreed. We were just hanging out watching a movie when he kissed me in a way he never had before, in a way I'd never been kissed before. It was surprising, and without having to be said, overwhelming. I got scared. It finally hit me that this was a full-grown man and I was a child. I got off my bed and told him he had to leave. His face contorted into anger, and he stepped towards me, trying to convince me through gritted teeth not to make him leave. He reached out to grab my shoulders, and out of instinct, I shoved his chest to make him back off, only for a harsh shove to be returned. A sharp pain suddenly overwhelmed me, spreading from the back of my head and down the rest of my body. Then everything went black. Next thing I knew, I was hearing a blood-curdling scream. Hazed out and too weak to open my eyes fully, I just barely made out my mom. I felt wetness on my head, and my body felt so cold now. It was just as I gathered that something was wrong that I lost consciousness again. My head was pounding, and my back was aching. I reached up hazily to feel where the pain was coming from, and my fingertips grazed a row of staples on a now bald patch of the left back part of my head, making me wince. Things went by fast from that point on. A doctor and my mother and father explaining that I must have slipped and hit my head on the windowsill, being that's where the first impact was made, before falling the rest of the way onto my tile floor. My mom came to my room to wake me for school and found me laying in a pool of my own blood. She thought I was dead because my breathing was so faint, but they had no idea as to why I slipped, and I was too embarrassed and ashamed of myself to tell anyone. I didn't think that I deserved justice for what Red did to me. Later on, I found out my obstacles for the injury, hearing loss in my right ear, as well as the inability to retain old memories. This event and a few flash memories of my childhood are the last things that I remember from before the incident. Though I was saddened by this, I was happy to be alive and to never see Red again. Now being 18, a few months ago I signed up for Plenty of Fish. I kept my wariness this time though and didn't go on any dates. I looked out for warning signs, and upon the first one, blocked just about everyone. Then one day I received a message, and it was from Red. I had blocked him on every other platform, including his number. It said, "Hey, how have you been?" I didn't respond, but I looked at his profile. It still said 26. Odd. So perhaps I didn't know his real age. Perhaps I didn't know this man at all, being that he thought that he must have killed me, and selfishly ran off without even attempting to see if I was alive. So Red, you can keep your charm. All I ask is that we never meet again. Thank you for making it this far. I hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to quickly let you know about a couple things I have going on. I have an Instagram where I post more personal things about who I am. It isn't just all creepy stuff. You can find me at Stories After Midnight. I also have a Twitter where I mainly retweet and like things I find interesting. The handle for that is in the description, but it is S_A_midnight. I should really find another one because that's hard to say. If you really like what I'm doing, consider joining the Midnighters. That's my growing community where we hang out and have fun and talk about cats. You can find a link to our Discord in the description below. We'd love to see you there. Other than that, it'd make me happier than a cat on a table full of antique glassware if you'd like the video and consider sticking around for more. We'll see you in the next one.